this episode of The Story Behind the Story, Matt Crowd sits down with Mike Rowe to talk about his podcast, The Way I Heard It, and how an old man teaches us to rethink what is risky.
On a cold morning in the winter of 2016, a reporter went to interview an old man who lived in the woods. Ivan Shemayanuk was one of a small group of individuals who had chosen to live off the grid in 1,000 square miles of wilderness that few people ever visited. The reporter wanted to know how he had managed to survive the elements for the last 30 years. The reporter drove as far as he could over rough terrain until he came to the edge of a dense forest, at which point he began to hike through the trees. He was struck by the natural beauty that surrounded him. The flora rivaled that of many national parks, and the fauna was no less impressive. Deer, moose, wild boar, beaver, lynx, and brown bear roamed with impunity. A lone wolf howled in the distance, providing an eerie soundtrack for his trek. When the temperature began to drop, and the snow began to fall, and the wind began to blow, the reporter picked up his pace. By the time he arrived at Ivan's home, he was chilled to the bone and eager to get inside. He knocked on the wooden door, and along with a few dozen elderly neighbors who made their home out here in the forest. The seniors
from Svetlana Alexievich. She was a part of a production called Voices of Chernobyl. Quote, "Is there anything more frightening than people?"
Yeah, that's another. It was a great story. Was it Richard O'Connor? Called The Most Dangerous Game. Remember that?
Yeah.
Short story. The guy's a big hunter,
Yeah.
and he decides, I'd be challenging to hunt people. Dark, but no, that's an astute observation.
My sister lived here with her husband. They decided to leave soon enough. They were in the ground. They died from anxiety. I'm not anxious. I sing a little. I take a turn in the yard. Take things slowly. Like this, and I live. Ivan
Shemayanuk. That's the first quote I found from him. And again, I know the risk. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but the story of his story matters. Just in part because of the nuclear thing, and I got to be in my bonnet about that because I think it's important and it matters, but also in light of recent events, the decision to leave your home, the freedom to leave your home, the freedom or the lack of freedom to leave your home. You must leave, spring 1986, Chernobyl. You must stay, the United States, 2020. History's a wheel, and she always spins.
So have you just, Mike, chosen a unique way to bring this conversation to the homes of our audience and anyone else that sees this bits, pieces, or parts? I mean, you're really, this episode is, I'll use your words, kind of you have a bee in your bonnet over this, and this one really kind of is part of who you are.
Well, anybody who shares my addiction to smooth roads and affordable electricity and indoor plumbing and heating and air conditioning ought to be really, really interested in where their energy comes from. And we ought to take the time to understand what it takes to get the energy out of the ground and what it means for our country to be energy independent. versus what it means to rely on somebody else to provide us with the very materials that so many people are convinced is going to bring about some kind of Armageddon in the next couple of years. So many people in our country right now, Matt, are legitimately scared to death that they're going to live to see the end of the world. That makes me sad because I don't think the fear is rooted in reality.
This dumbass driverless car drove in a parking lot. For what reason? Huh? There ain't nobody driving this thing. Stupid ass car driving in on private property. And there's the damn tag number. This is stupid. This is stupid. Why in God's name to let this thing run around the city of Atlanta like this? It's supposed to be a Jaguar. Damn. It'd be nice if you could get this, whatever this is, out from around on top of this in the way. You know, it kind of makes it hard to get past the tree limbs and vines and whatever. Appreciate it.
That appears to me every time I open my eyes does not have some very good reason for its existence. So we have two great competing stories about reality. One posits a purposeful creator behind the universe. The other envisions mindless processes producing everything we see. But which of these stories is true? What explains all of this? What's the story of everything?